Hello and welcome to Bonsai with Tom. Guess what? We're going to do more pruning and let's just get right to it. This is a cutting. It's actually a large water cutting. I think it's the largest water cutting I ever did. I think I did this last winter, and I'm also pruning the parent tree, which will be coming up shortly. But it's put on a lot of growth. This is just your standard Portulacaria Afra, and I cut this large top off in order to style this other tree as a kind of a slant tree or a slanting style because it just looked. I struggled with that tree so many times. I kept cutting pieces off of it until I finally got it to what something that I like, which I ended up with here. And I'm just shortening everything up. I really just want to get more ramification, and it's fairly new in this pot, and I want it to really get established and put out some roots. And I can see a lot of things I really want to drastically shorten over time. But I'm not sure if I'm going to put. I may put this in the cool area of my storage area for my trees. In which case, I mean, it'll grow, but it won't grow a lot if I don't keep it in the warm part of the house. So I guess I'm saying I don't want to do a lot of heavy pruning on it because I like it to kind of recover quickly. So I'm just shortening everything and don't really plan on taking the knife to it in any serious manner for this pruning. I think it's got some potential. I mean, I really need to do more. Branch. That's interesting. I need to do more branch selection. But I don't know. I'm just letting it all grow now. You can see where I have some bar branches there and stuff coming out, and I want to wait until I see some character on a branch that I really like. So I'm just sort of punting, and I wanted to put on more vigorous growth. This is in the Akadama soil. I think I told you about this before. I got this. It was more like of a Shohin mix of Akadama. I think it's like 50% Akadama and black lava and pumice. And the trees really seem to like it. I have noticed that they tend to grow. It's interesting. They grow more kind of slowly, but maybe more compactly, I guess, which is interesting to me. So and I sort of expected the Akadama to stay wetter longer than my standard, mix, which is, I guess it has, maybe because this I think has basically no organic component at all in there, and my standard mix does have some pine bark, so maybe that's why. I guess what I'm saying is some of this Akadama seems to dry out as fast or faster than my regular mix, so it wasn't. I was kind of going for something that I could water less often, but I mean, I don't know. It's not all that different than no matter what soils I've tried with my ports. I haven't seen a dramatic difference, but this is the most dramatic I've seen where it seems to grow slower, a bit slower. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna shorten it back, and I think longer term this tree has some potential. It just has so many branches. I might. I mean, I almost never wire trees. But I think when I get, I'm just going to let this flush out with some more growth, and when I get more serious about it, I think I may actually do some wiring uh, on this one. Also, I don't really have a name for this tree. Sometimes I name them after the pot, just to give them some distinct name if they don't have a character built into the tree that screams a name. So I don't know. Maybe I would go with Little Red Riding Hood or something with this one. I don't have too many red pots. But yeah, you can see I could bend some of this down and put a little style to it. So yeah, if you have an idea for a name or pruning or styling or anything, I really encourage you to put a comment on the video, and I read them and look at them and respond to them. I mean, always, if I haven't responded to one, it's just because I missed it. But I really value your input. I think it's kind of fun to get different perspectives on what we're doing. You see, this is pretty long. Yeah, maybe I'll shorten it a bit more. But it doesn't have a bad shape. It's everything's kind of coming up and out. A lot of branches to work with. And so, like I said before, I think this is kind of some promising material. I'm not going to take this back piece is a bit high. I don't think I want that. I'd rather have something going out this direction. Could take the wire off, but I'm not going to bother. Like it doesn't look like it's cutting in. That's actually much more of a concern in the summer when they get full of water and they're growing fast, and then the kind of trunk swells up. But I try to keep them pretty dry, potentially in the winter, depending where I'm going to put it. So yeah, I'll just leave the wire on for now. I'm not also not sure how many roots it has. I think it has good roots, but uh, I'm a little iffy on how strongly it would stay in here all by itself just yet. And I think that's about a wrap for this one. I mean, I really want to cut some of these back short. I keep putting the scissors over there. But because I want to try some wiring experiments with ports and see how it goes on this one, I think this one's a pretty good candidate because, it's got some nice branches and it even has some interesting bark character on it. I have no idea how old this cutting is. So I'm just gonna let it grow, and then next time we work on it, assuming it's, um, cooking with gas and its growth and it looks super healthy, we'll throw some wire on it and see what we can do. But yeah, I think it's off to you know, a reasonable start. This is a little, I guess, see, I could pull that down and then it would fan out and actually get decent branches there. But that's for the future. This one's pretty much done. I think, we've certainly cleaned it up a bit and given it a chance to grow a little bit more compactly. I may lose this first branch here. We'll see. We'll have a heavy wiring session and see where it comes out. um, yeah, so this one is kind of a wrap. And let's move on to the next tree. This is what I call my dragon's egg. You can see this pot is really cool. It sort of reminds me of the dragon's eggs in Game of Thrones, and this tree's grown quite a bit. I mean, it's a variegated, so they're kind of slower. And I just want to tune it up a bit. Give it a chance to get more ramification and branching closer in where I want it. And it's a cool pot. I should mention the maker of this pot is. Let me just start off by taking some of the stuff. Like this is. Um, I keep going back and forth on this lower branch. I'm thinking of cutting it off actually because I think it's kind of cool. Or either that or cut the top off. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. But I sort of feel like I like the tree on the top if I don't have that branch hanging down, cascading down, and I like the cascade sort of, although it's kind of straight and uninteresting without the top. So I don't know. Maybe there's a compromise in there, but when I look at this, um, I really like the top part, and maybe the compromise is to cut it like here or even shorter, and have it cascade down, but have it start closer in to the main tree. My real objection is this long hanging straight piece on the cascade. It's and it looks worse I think in person than it looks here, but yeah, not a whole lot to do in this one. I'm just going to shorten it up. Um, these variegated grow more slowly, so this is pretty good growth for a variegated. And like any port, you want to sort of hit the top because it will just keep growing there if you don't, at the expense of other areas. Oh, and so the pot is done by Candied Clay, and I'll put a link to their website. It's a husband and wife team. Candy, I think, is the wife's name, and Jared. And so Jared does a lot of bonsai. Maybe Candy does too, but I think she primarily does the pottery. I've met her multiple times. And they're both just amazing, interesting people to talk to. I always love talking to creative people, especially like if you're talking about their art or whatever they're into or making or excited about. It's like it's just amazing. It's maybe this is a good thought for the day. It's almost like when we're kids, like where there's just like a excitement and energy and crackle in your brains when you're talking about cool stuff. And I think this, just kind of looking at it from the top, I want to let this just grow some more. Like this hasn't been in this pot very long, and I think I just want to let it grow some more. And I'm sort of looking at styling aspects of this. I really like the pot. I think it's a good combination. I love the color with these, these leaves. And as I look at this, it has a nice look to it. I've got it kind of wired in there pretty heavily. I could probably take that out, but it's not biting in, so I'm just leaving it there for now. But I really like how the top has started to grow, and I'm just thinking about um, future options of the direction I might want to take this in. And one thing that jumps out to me is to perhaps, um, this long section here, just take that off. And I think that would make a nice tree. I know that it actually doesn't look too bad here in the video, but in person, it's really just kind of long and uninteresting. Now, I can always take that off later, and for now, it's certainly going to increase the thickness of the trunk. So, there's no real huge downside to, taking it off later. But as I look at it, the more I look at it, the more, I don't know. I keep waffling back and forth. Give me your opinion in the comments. What you think I should do there. I mean, it is kind of developing some nice branches on the lower end, and so I think it could actually become a pretty nice cascade branch down there, and I think it does give the tree a bit of interest. So I don't know. I could go both ways on it, but like I said, let me know what you think. But I think for now, this one is pretty much pruned up in its pineapple dragon's egg green pot and ready to have a nice long slower growth for the wintertime. This next tree I've had for a while now. I call this my leaning lemonade because of the pot. Again, it's a candied clay pot. I feel like we're doing a feature here, and I've often thought of bringing some branches down. I think I mentioned that multiple times. I haven't done it yet, and I think it would just give either that or just lean the tree a bit more to the right. You can see I've got this growth down here to thicken up the trunk. Let's see, get a better look at it, and it's working. I kind of continue to loosen this wire because that growth, it is actually working. So it's a technique, and I sort of want to show it. And actually, my goal here is to develop an entire tree out of this, and then cut it off and root it, and you get an instant pretty decent looking bonsai. And that's coming along pretty well so far. So the goal here is to just neaten it up and do some pruning. And another thing I've noticed is it's similar to I guess it's really a sacrifice branch. I mean, I'm really developing a tree just because we're working with Portulacaria Afra here, and that just works really well for this. But you can definitely see that by allowing that section on the right to really go crazy, it does slow down the rest of the tree, which can be an advantage, right? If you want to work on finer growth, because the tree tends to put the huge steam in areas that are taking off, and then you get a bit, you get finer growth in the weaker areas, which is sometimes something you want, particularly on other types of bonsai. It's like a standard technique. You can Google it. I don't do much of it, but it definitely works. And if you try it, I think you'll see right away that the stronger growth will take off at the expense of the weaker growth. But sometimes that is exactly what you want if you don't want to ruin your design, or you're trying to get smaller leaves, more branching. I'm just going through and taking off a lot of these lower leaves. I don't see a whole lot of pruning on this. I really just want to neaten up. I'm going to start on this right hand side, which is sort of my leaning style tree, and the top as always really takes off and needs special attention. I apologize. You can often hear the planes going over. We're on sort of a, well, I mean, we're kind of on a flight path way up with SeaTac, but those planes are up so high you can't hear them. But there's also a smaller operation that lands in the lake out of Kenmore, which is just kind of across Lake Washington. Lake Washington's about, I think it's 2 miles wide, um, pretty maybe 8 miles long, something like that. Extremely deep, but I don't know what you call those small planes that land. There's a small airport over there, and people are constantly taking off, and so you hear that. And it seems to be much busier at certain times of the year. It was interesting at 9/11. It was just dead silence, which I never really noticed that sound much until it wasn't there, and then you sort of miss it. But yeah, you will often hear that in the background when I'm outside here pruning in the summertime, and you will also hear Mabel becoming irate. I'm cutting off some of this stuff that's going back. Most of, like with a leaning style tree. The idea is the wind's blowing from this direction, and so not only wind but harsh weather and all that. So nothing really should grow too strongly into the wind. And so in order to keep that, and it just looks natural. I mean, when you look at it, you really don't. It'll quickly lose that slanting style if you have a bunch of stuff coming off to the right, which is maybe what you want, but at least so far for now. Although this tree has had a lot of, a lot of, I've had a lot of difficulty coming to a style in this tree, and so I'm gonna go with this for a while because this is one of the ones that I've just kind of flip flopped the design on over time, and so I'm really gonna work on this. I do think, as much as I love this pot, and it's a beautiful pot, it I'm not sure it's a perfect match for this tree, so I've bought a couple of more rectangular pots that I want to put this in, which I think will, it'll give it sort of more balance. And I think it'll work. I think this one, if I really change the angle of the tree and really make that first branch a cascade, I think this pot would work a lot better. So that's also an option. I'm still working on exactly what I want to do with that. And I think the time to make that decision will be when I take this little tree, which we will be pruning here directly, off to the right. So you can see I could bend that down and change the angle, and I think it would be a nice looking, sort of semi-cascade. So this one needs pruned, and like I said, I don't want to take it back too hard because this is sort of my, I'm just letting this one go wild. But, I want it to not look overly shaggy, and, I'm sort of pruning it with an eye towards, okay, well, what branches do I want to keep? Do some branch selection, and just treat it like any other branch or tree that you might prune, because that is the end goal for this, the sacrifice tree, I'll call it. It's actually one of the most fascinating things about working with dwarf jade, Portulacaria Afra, is that you can do this. I did bonsai a decade and a half ago. I never really did air layering, but I think this one is kind of shorten it out because I might want that lower branch, although it doesn't work with the current design because it's kind of in the crotch. But eventually it will be coming out of there. I'm just gonna get rid of it. But yeah, I definitely see why people do a lot of air layering because it's just so magical to sort of have, pretty much an instant bonsai with a decent trunk, that you're creating from another tree. And yeah, so if you haven't done that, I mean, definitely experiment with Portulacaria Afra because it is really addictive once you start doing it. And you can see how this will look when I take that off and maybe do some wiring or change the angle on here. Yeah, this tree, it's kind of like, I sort of like it, but it's not overly interesting, and so I definitely need to think about what I want to do with it. And maybe as it just gets some more ramification, that will come. Because it has a nice bark and it's got some age on it. I guess it seems too predictable. Like you see these three layers and then the angle. It's like, I don't know. It's okay. It's just nothing that really excites me. I could shorten this up, but I think that actually helps a lot. Just kind of bring everything in tighter instead of having these long branches. But I'm definitely getting some development on the branch and the pad out here. So, yeah, if anyone has any suggestions, ideas for this one, let me know. Like I said, this tree it looks like a fabulous material to work with, but it has been a little challenging for me. And I think that's pretty much a wrap for this one. We'll take a look at it. You can see, I think one of the nicest features is the bark on this. And you can see I have a lot of rings. So, if I cut it back, I think I'll get a lot of good branching. I definitely think bringing this down. But then I also think I'll have to change the angle of some of these other ones, which is not necessarily bad. And the last tree we're going to prune today, this is the idea was to have a small forest on top of this really cool pot. It's like, it reminds me of like the top of a volcano. Brenda Good made this pot. It's a very heavy pot. Like this, I've got a, that's one of the fasteners I have for my automated watering system that I use when I went on vacation in the summer. It looks like somehow it got in there. Whoa, let me fix the camera here. Yeah, so this is Lilliput, Portulacaria Afra, so you get really small leaves, although you can see once they take off, they will build up a head of steam. And, I don't know. I think this is the second or third summer I've had these. I think the second summer. And they're starting to get some character. I've pruned these multiple times. I really like this tree in the front. I'm not sure this composition really works together for me as a whole. But you can see they're healthy. They really like growing in here. And so, the idea is to just, take this 3-tree volcano top black lava forest and neaten it up. And get it ready for its next. It's really pretty shaggy and needs some growth and thinning out. And so I think I'm just going to start by just reducing all the long shoots. And I really like this top tree, this front tree. And the others not so much. I think part of it is they're also close together on this that it's hard to. The back trees don't really get a chance to be very sophisticated because there's hardly any room to see them. Although I've been trying to do that, but I try to sort of have their growth go off in the opposite direction of the center tree. And it's kind of worked to some degree, but I've never really been overly happy with it. And I think this pot might be much better suited to a nice, thick, chunky cascade that kind of goes down over the left-hand side. And I have several trees that would totally work with that. So eventually, I am going to move. Got a nice triangular shape here. This tree is it's really looking nice to me now. It's got like really some complexity. These Lilliput variety is so much fun to work with because everything is so tiny. It almost feels like you're working with. I was gonna say Chinese elm, but I think these leaves are even smaller. And they really like to just grow really well and be compact, and you get pretty short internodes, and it's just a charming variety to work with. I know some of these I think these are a little harder to find, but if you can and you run across them at Home Depot or something, I would definitely pick one up because they are a lot of they're very, very rewarding dwarf jade variety to work with. And I'm just kind of giving it the lawnmower treatment here. I sort of come in and, I'm just kind of pruning it to shape, and then I'll come in and fine tune it. I usually just kind of do the rough pruning on this, just, the standard, taking out stuff that's too long, too thick, the wrong direction, creating some space between the pads. And once I get that kind of rough cut pruning done, then I just keep refining it and come in and thin out the branch structure and leaves so that you can see more of the trunk. Like I can see this left branch now, and it helps to put your hand back here, and you can see it's just a charming looking little tree. I'm really happy with it. So this one may go into its own pot because I just like it so much. And speaking of pots, I have a nice collection of pots now. When I first got back into this, I had a lot of larger pots, but I don't really work on larger trees so much anymore. I'm really just kind of really shaving it down now. And this is all part of it, you know, you kind of want to really, you have to thin it out, or what happens is all this growth on the outside will keep going and prevent sun from getting to the stuff in closer, and it'll actually, you know, die back, become unhealthy, unsightly. So you really do have to keep on the pruning. And you just take your time, and you know you can't really make mistakes if you cut off something that you didn't want to. It'll grow back, um, and that's the process. But I was talking about pots. I haven't done any repotting in quite a while, and you know I mentioned I had all these larger pots, and I sold a bunch of them just because you know I kept some that I could use for forests, and you know you probably should never really sell a pot. But I had all these big pots and I didn't have room for them. And so I sold a bunch of them and I've bought a bunch of smaller pots, which I mean, just I absolutely love. And so I have a lot of pots now and I haven't been doing any repotting. I don't think I've repotted anything this entire summer. Really looking sharp now. You see how when you thin it out, you can kind of see through and it just gives the tree a much more, in my mind, you know, realistic, natural appearance, you know, because if you look at a tree, some trees in nature are just like a ball of green, but I think it's just so much, you get so much more complexity if you do it this way. And to me, it looks more, just looks more natural. Like I really like to see through some of these layers and have a lot of um, sparsity, you know. I guess is a good way to describe it. But back to the pots. Yeah, so, and I think, you know, the other thing I like about these is, you know, I keep most of them under indoor grow lights. I'm just going to go onto the back tree and same process. I'm just going to initially go at it like a lawnmower and then slowly hone in on what I want. But the, yeah, so I think I'm going to be doing a lot of repotting. You know, this winter once I get everything inside, because I've done that in the past, and I mean they don't really miss a beat. It seems to work really well, and you know you have a lot more control indoors. Actually, I can completely control the amount of light. I can control the water, the temperature. You know, I'm in control of everything. The only downside I found is you know you do have more problems with insects because hey, they love that cushy indoor environment, especially ones that don't mind it being dry, you know, which is really the main concern I've had with at least my current indoor setup. I don't, in the I have two. One is a very cold area, and the humidity stays pretty high there. It's like I don't know, 50%, which is about perfect, I think. And then uh, indoors it's much lower because we have forced air heat, and so you know it starts off. You know, the colder it gets, the lower the humidity gets, and it you know it'll get down to like 30%, which succulents like. But what I found is when it gets that dry for whatever reason, that's when you start to have more insect issues. So you really have to watch out for that. But it's not a big deal as long as you're aware of it. And I'm really pruning this guy. And this is what I mean. I feel like these back trees, I think, will be able to shine more in a different forest. Like it's just hard to see much more of them. I'm really kind of designing, like, if you look at it from the front, I'm really designing it, you know, as a basic triangle. And the way I've planted them, it's not so asymmetrical. Um, but you know, it's working. It's what I'm doing now. Any progress is good. Like you're getting trunk development, you get some age on the tree. You know, these lower branches, I'm sure I'll always be able to use. They've got good placement, so it's not wasted. You know, it's just I'm trying to find the more optimal solution for that. Well, there's not a whole lot more I can do to that little tree. So, you know, I've taken it right down to its essence, which is how I like to do it. So yeah, look, these two together looking pretty good. You know, I've thought about taking the top off there, but I don't. I don't know. I think that might be a step too far for that tree. But and now we have this little bush to deal with. But back on the pots. Yeah, I'm looking forward. I have so many nice pots now, and a lot of my trees. I try to go with a really nice tree pot combination. Like, and what I found, it's very. I mean, I've tried to buy pots with a particular tree in mind, where I'm absolutely sure this is just going to be a perfect match. And it's not until you actually have the tree, and usually, I mean, literally, at the time that I'm repotting the tree, I have it out of the pot. I've kind of done a little bit of root raking, to the point where, I can put this one really needs some pruning. I can put the tree like physically into the pot and get an idea of how it's going to look. Like you just don't know. You really don't know until you've done that. As I said, I've bought pots that I was absolutely sure were a perfect match for a tree, and it just didn't work. And then, so you need a lot of pots if you want to get a good combination. And I definitely have some trees that I think work really, really well with pots. But then I also have some, like this one where I really like the pot and I needed a place to put some trees. And so I just kind of put them in here, but it wasn't, a great combination. And I didn't really consider many options because I didn't have that many options. So all that is to say, and this could be a bonus thought for the day, is you need a lot of pots, and it's not just because I'm not just enabling you bonsai artists out there. If you want a good pot tree combination, I don't really think there's any other way to do it because it's very hard to just go out and buy the right pot for the right tree. You really just need to, like, I like to pick three that I think are my top contenders, and usually two out of the three are pretty darn good, and one really stands out, and then you've made a great choice. And I have had cases where what I thought would be a good pot combination, even picking three was bad, and I had to pick three more, and so you really don't know. But that I found works really well. But you need some pots in different styles, So I like to have. I've got some circular ones. I've got some ovals, some rectangles, some tall ones, thin ones, different textures, different colors. Um, and if you have that going into repotting, it's just you can get really something that's magical. And I think we're kind of getting there. I still maybe a bit more pruning. I don't know. Maybe I'm rethinking. I think actually this doesn't look too bad now. These three may work as a forest. I just think um, this pot. It was definitely the vision I was kind of going for when I put these in here. Trees on top of a volcano. I think I have other videos for this tree. I'm not sure I have a playlist. I'll make one if I don't, but where I talk about the inspiration, and I think I show some pictures of what I was going for, and I think I achieved that. It just maybe the goal wasn't um, the right goal for this tree. I think this pot. It's a really cool pot. They're really cool trees. I just think they would be better off with a different pairing. That's all. Part of it is the trees. I mean, they're really small, but detailed. And I think the pot is coarse, rough, and kind of overbearing. But man, we have taken a lot off. I think this tree is still a bit on the thick side. But yeah, as I'm kind of finishing this up, definitely look forward. We're going to be doing a lot of repotting. I really wanted to do a lot of it this summer. I was so excited. My month-long vacation kind of came really as a surprise. I really had a kind of a tough year health-wise, and I really needed to just go somewhere and do nothing and rejuvenate and recoup, and that really, really worked for me. But as a consequence, I was not able to do my relaxing bonsai work. And I think we are pretty much winding this one down. I'm going to clear out all these tiny, tiny leaves. I'm just going to snow plow it off the edge here. But yeah, so that's why I really haven't done any repotting. I mean, I've done a few new plantings, but Yeah, and I'm very curious. I have a lot of, well, not a lot. I've even lost track. Maybe 4 or 5 new plantings I've done since last winter that are in this akadama soil. And I really want to dig in there and see how the roots are going because I've used very, very coarse, even chunky bonsai soil, which these trees seem to love. And you get really good root development with that. And I'm very curious to see how they like the akadama. So let's take a closer look here. I really want to look at the main tree, which just really, I like it. Do a little fine tuning on it here. I mean, you can always come in and make it a little bit better, and at some point you just have to decide you're done. But like I said, I really like the bark and kind of the fine detailed nature of this one, which the Lilliput variety gives you the ability to really work on that. What a beautiful little tree. Um, and it's not that old. You know, you can really do some cool stuff with these PAs in not a whole lot of time. And I think I'm gonna stop on this one. Yeah, just adorable. Maybe a little fine tuning here just to create a little more space, and because it's gonna fill in quick. These guys, you give them light and space, and they love to take off. And yeah, I think with that we're about done. We've got a nice triangle shape here, and nice trunk. We got these 2 trees pruned up, and our main tree, and let's clean up a little, and then we'll do our victory lap. And that is going to be a wrap for today. And always, I want to thank you for spending time with me, watching the show, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. I really appreciate all the interaction and the comments. We have a lot of new people to Bonsai. It's so exciting to me. I love to live vicariously that way because I remember, maybe I'll take the top off eventually here. I remember that excitement. It's like what I mentioned before, it being children, but we'll talk more about that in a future video. Have a good week.